The day humanity broke. The galaxy would later remember that day as the moment everything changed. Not because a great empire fell. Not because a superweapon was fired. But because humanity stopped pretending to be civilized. For over 200 years, Earth had been known as the most peaceful major power in the Galactic Union. Humans negotiated when others threatened. Humans traded when others conquered. Humans sent doctors, engineers, and aid ships to worlds suffering from famine, war, and disaster. Many alien species mocked them for it. They are soft. They are weak. They still believe kindness matters. The humans heard these insults and smiled anyway. Because humanity remembered its own bloody history. They knew exactly what violence could do. And they never wanted to become those monsters again. So when the war started, Earth stayed neutral. The conflict involved the Zorath Dominion and the Valkyrie Coalition, two ancient alien powers fighting over disputed systems. Entire planets burned. Billions died. Yet humanity refused to take sides. Instead, Earth created safe zones. Refugee corridors. Medical stations. Human hospital ships traveled through war zones carrying wounded soldiers from both sides. To humanity, suffering was suffering. It did not matter what flag someone served. That was when the Zorath made their fatal mistake. The hospital convoy designated Massive Fleet 7 was traveling through the neutral Helios corridor. Every vessel carried medical markings recognized by galactic law. The ships contained doctors, nurses, children, refugees, and civilians rescued from combat zones. No weapons. No soldiers. No military escorts. Just humanitarians. More than 30,000 souls. The convoy transmitted its identity repeatedly. Its navigation beacons were active. There could be no confusion. No misunderstanding. No accident. The Zorath battle group arrived at 3:17 Galactic Standard Time. At 3:18 they opened fire. The first hospital ship vanished in a ball of white plasma. The second exploded seconds later. Then the third. And the fourth. Panic erupted across the fleet. Emergency transmissions flooded every frequency. We are a medical convoy. There are civilians aboard. Cease fire. The Zorath answered with missiles. For 12 horrifying minutes, they hunted unarmed ships. Escape pods. Medical transports. Rescue craft. Anything that moved. Anything carrying life. They destroyed it. 30,000 people died. Doctors burned alive in operating rooms. Children died clutching evacuation blankets. Entire families disappeared into vacuum. When the massacre ended, only wreckage remained. The galaxy watched in shock. News feeds carried the images everywhere. Burning hospital ships. Floating bodies. Destroyed escape pods. Even species hardened by centuries of war were horrified. The Zorath government released a statement hours later. The message contained no apology. No regret. No sorrow. Instead, they claimed human aid operations were secretly helping their enemies. According to them, the attack had been strategically necessary. The galaxy erupted in outrage. But outrage was not justice. And justice did not bring back the dead. On Earth, something changed. Across every continent, people gathered around screens. Silently. Watching the footage. Watching doctors die while trying to save others. Watching children scream for help. Watching heroes disappear into fire. No riots occurred. No angry speeches. No emotional broadcasts. Something far more frightening happened. Humanity became quiet. Governments that normally argued with each other suddenly agreed. Political rivals stopped fighting. Military commanders received sealed orders. Shipyards switched to emergency production. Factories operated 24 hours a day. Entire economies shifted overnight. Across Earth, Mars, Luna, and the outer colonies, one sentence began appearing on public networks. Nobody knew who wrote it first. Yet billions repeated it. We remember who we used to be. The words spread like wildfire. Citizens painted them on walls. Soldiers engraved them onto armor. Workers displayed them in factories. The phrase carried a meaning the rest of the galaxy did not understand. Not yet. 3 days later, representatives from every major species gathered at the Galactic Senate. They expected condemnation, sanctions, perhaps a declaration of war. Instead, they received a message from Earth. A single transmission. Only 8 words long. The human ambassador looked directly into the camera. His face showed no anger, no hatred, no emotion at all. That frightened everyone more than rage ever could. Then he spoke. Earth is done being civilized. Prepare yourselves. The transmission ended. Across the Senate chamber, silence fell. Alien leaders stared at one another in confusion. Some laughed nervously. Others dismissed the statement as emotional rhetoric. They believed humanity would eventually calm down. Return to diplomacy. Return to negotiations. Return to mercy. They did not understand the truth. The massacre had not awakened humanity's anger. It had awakened humanity's memory. And deep within that memory slept something ancient. Something terrifying. Something the human race had spent centuries trying to bury. Now it was waking up. And the galaxy was about to learn why humanity had worked so hard to keep that monster chained. The monster we buried. The Zorath Dominion celebrated. Their admirals congratulated one another. Their politicians claimed victory. State-controlled news networks portrayed the destruction of Massive Fleet 7 as a strategic success. According to official reports, humanity would protest, impose sanctions, then perhaps deploy a few warships for show. Then everything would return to normal. After all, that was what civilized species did. That was what humans always did. The Zorath believed Earth was predictable. They could not have been more wrong. Far from the public eye, beneath the mountains of Earth, emergency command bunkers came alive. Massive doors that had not opened in decades slowly moved aside. Ancient military archives were unlocked. Restricted programs buried under centuries of security protocols were reactivated. Generals entered rooms they had only heard about in classified briefings. Inside those chambers rested humanity's darkest lessons. Lessons written in blood. For hundreds of years, Earth had studied its own violent history. The world wars. The resource conflicts. The colonial rebellions. The planetary crisis period. Humanity had examined every mistake, every atrocity, every battlefield disaster. Not to repeat them. To prevent them. The result was a civilization dedicated to peace. But peace required knowledge. And knowledge never truly disappeared. Now those lessons were being reopened. At the United Earth Defense Headquarters, Supreme Commander Elena Torres stood before a giant holographic display. The room contained representatives from every human government and colony. No one spoke. Everyone understood the gravity of the moment. Torres looked around the chamber. The question before us is simple, she said. Do we respond as diplomats? Silence. Or do we respond as survivors? The answer came instantly. Every representative voted. Every single one. Unanimous. The decision shocked even the military officers present. Humanity had not reached unanimous agreement on anything this important in over a century. Yet now there was complete unity. Not because of hatred. Because of responsibility. 30,000 innocent people had trusted humanity to protect them. Humanity had failed. That failure would not happen twice. Within hours, Operation Iron Dawn was activated. Across human space, dormant fleets began mobilizing. Shipyards accelerated construction schedules. Civilian industries converted to military production. Artificial intelligence logistics networks redirected resources with astonishing efficiency. Entire sectors transformed overnight. The galaxy watched the build-up with growing concern. Then intelligence reports began arriving. At first, they seemed impossible. Human fleets were appearing in places they should not reach for months. Supply chains operated with supernatural precision. Production numbers exceeded every prediction. Military analysts struggled to explain what they were seeing. One Valkyrie observer finally summarized it perfectly. The humans are not acting like a peaceful nation preparing for war. What are they acting like? Someone asked. The observer swallowed nervously. A species that has done this before. Meanwhile, deep inside Zorath territory, strange incidents began occurring. Communication relays malfunctioned. Supply depots exploded. Navigation systems failed without explanation. Military databases vanished. Nothing catastrophic. Nothing dramatic. Just thousands of tiny disruptions. Individually insignificant. Collectively devastating. The Zorath security forces searched desperately for the cause. They found nothing. Because the attacks had started years earlier. Human intelligence agencies had quietly built networks across the Dominion long before the massacre. Not for conquest. For observation. For prevention. Now those networks had received new orders. Every hidden asset. Every undercover operative. Every cyber warfare team. Activated simultaneously. For the first time, the Zorath began to feel uneasy. Then came the economic collapse. Human corporations withdrew investments. Trade agreements disappeared. Financial systems connected to Earth instantly severed all ties. Markets across the Dominion crashed. Factories shut down. Essential imports vanished. The Zorath leadership responded with confidence. Economic pressure meant little. They still possessed one of the largest military forces in the galaxy. Warships mattered more than markets. At least, that was what they believed. 3 weeks after the massacre, a Zorath border fleet entered the Hades Expanse. The formation consisted of 42 warships. A powerful force capable of intimidating most neighboring powers. Their mission was routine. A show of strength. Nothing more. The fleet never arrived. When investigators later reached the last known coordinates, they discovered something terrifying. The entire battle group was gone. Not damaged. Not scattered. Gone. No distress calls. No debris. No survivors. Nothing. The mystery spread across the galaxy. Rumors exploded everywhere. Pirates. Experimental weapons. Ancient aliens. Nobody knew. Only humanity knew the truth. And humanity remained silent. A week later, another Zorath fleet vanished. Then another. Then another. Fear began spreading through the Dominion. Captains grew nervous. Crews refused assignments. Military confidence started crumbling. For generations, the Zorath had relied on overwhelming strength. Now that strength seemed powerless against an invisible enemy. Finally, the Dominion demanded answers. An emergency message was transmitted directly to Earth. What are you doing? The response arrived minutes later. A single sentence. Cold. Precise. Unforgettable. We are reminding you why peace was our choice. Across the galaxy, leaders who heard those words felt a chill. Because they were beginning to understand something humanity had always hidden. Peace had never existed because humans were incapable of war. Peace existed because humans knew exactly what war could become. And now the restraints were coming off. Slowly. Deliberately. Methodically. The Zoroastrians still believed they could win. They still believed this was merely another conflict. Another political dispute. Another military campaign. They had not yet realized they were facing something far worse. They were facing a civilization that had spent centuries studying every possible way to destroy an enemy, and had finally decided to use that knowledge. Far beyond the frontier, the hidden human fleets moved through the darkness. Thousands of warships advanced without broadcasting signals, without speeches, without threats, without mercy. And at their head sailed a flagship bearing a new message engraved across its armored hull. A message visible from millions of kilometers away. The words were simple, but they made every human who read them stand a little straighter. Never again. The fall of the Dominion. By the fourth week, panic had spread throughout the Zoroastrian Dominion. The government tried to hide it. Officials appeared on broadcasts claiming everything was under control. Military leaders promised victory. Propaganda channels insisted humanity was weak and desperate. But ordinary citizens could see the truth. Trade routes were collapsing. Communication networks were unreliable. Entire fleets were disappearing. And worst of all, nobody knew where the humans were. The fear of an invisible enemy was far more dangerous than any weapon. Meanwhile, humanity remained silent. No declarations. No grand speeches. No threats. Only action. Across human-controlled space, war production reached levels never seen before. Gigantic shipyards orbiting Earth, Mars, and Jupiter worked day and night. Thousands of vessels rolled off assembly lines every week. Autonomous factories built weapons faster than military planners could count them. Yet strangely, humanity was not targeting civilian populations. They were not bombing cities. They were not attacking hospitals. They were not massacring innocents. The contrast was impossible to ignore. Every operation focused on military infrastructure. Fleet bases. Weapons depots. Command centers. Supply hubs. The message was clear. Humanity had not abandoned morality. They had simply abandoned restraint. The difference terrified everyone. At a secret command station near Saturn, Supreme Commander Elena Torres studied the latest reports. The operation was proceeding exactly as planned. Every Zoroastrian response had been predicted months earlier. Every fleet movement analyzed. Every weakness identified. A young officer approached her. "Ma'am, the intelligence estimates the Dominion has lost nearly 40% of its combat capability." Torres nodded. "And civilian casualties?" "Minimal." The officer hesitated. "Much lower than expected." Torres stared at the holographic map. "Good." The officer looked surprised. Many people expected revenge. But revenge was not the objective. Justice was. There was a difference. Humanity wanted the architects of the massacre. The commanders. The admirals. The politicians who had given the order. Not innocent families. Not children. Not ordinary citizens trapped inside a corrupt system. That distinction would become one of the most important decisions in human history. Because it proved something crucial. Humanity's monster had awakened. But it remained on a leash. For now. Then came the Battle of Karen Gate. The battle that changed the entire war. Karen Gate was one of the most heavily fortified military positions in the galaxy. The Zoroastrians considered it impenetrable. Over 2,000 warships protected the system. Planetary defense cannons could destroy fleets from millions of kilometers away. Generations of military strategists had concluded the same thing. Karen Gate could not be conquered. So humanity did not conquer it. They erased it. The attack began at exactly 4 o'clock Galactic Standard Time. Without warning, every communication system in the sector failed. Defense networks went dark. Targeting computers malfunctioned. Sensors filled with false readings. Confusion spread through the Zoreth fleet. Then the humans appeared. Thousands of ships emerged from hyperspace simultaneously. Perfect formation. Perfect coordination. Perfect timing. The defenders never had a chance. Human railguns struck fast. Massive projectiles traveling at impossible speeds shattered command vessels before alarms could sound. Missile swarms followed. Fighter wings flooded the battlefield. Electronic warfare systems blinded entire fleets. For 6 hours, the largest battle of the war raged across the stars. The Zoreth fought desperately. Their soldiers showed incredible courage. Their captains refused to surrender. But courage alone could not stop what was coming. Because humanity had spent centuries preparing for wars they hoped would never happen. And now those preparations were being unleashed. When the battle ended, Karen Gate no longer existed as a military fortress. Its defenses were destroyed. Its fleet annihilated. Its command structure gone. Yet civilian districts remained untouched. Hospitals still operated. Schools still stood. Residential zones remained intact. Human warships even delivered emergency supplies after the fighting stopped. The galaxy could hardly believe it. The same species capable of destroying a fortress in hours was also distributing food and medical aid. Many alien observers struggled to understand. Were humans monsters? Or heroes? The answer was becoming increasingly complicated. Back on Earth, footage from the battle spread across every news network. Citizens watched carefully. Many expected celebrations. There were none. No cheering crowds. No victory parades. No triumphant music. Instead, there was silence. Because every human understood a painful truth. None of this would bring back the 30,000 lives lost at Massive Fleet 7. No victory could erase that tragedy. No battle could heal those wounds. The war was necessary. But nobody enjoyed it. That difference mattered. Far inside the Dominion, fear finally reached the highest levels of government. The Zoreth High Council gathered in emergency session. For the first time since the conflict began, confidence had disappeared. One council member spoke what everyone was thinking. What if we lose? The room fell silent. Another leader shook his head. Impossible. Yet his voice lacked conviction. Because they all knew the numbers. Fleet losses were increasing. Supply lines were collapsing. Allies were abandoning them. Even neutral powers were quietly supporting humanity. Then a military advisor entered the chamber carrying a classified report. His face was pale. His hands trembled. What is it? The council leader demanded. The advisor swallowed hard. We intercepted a human strategic projection. And the advisor looked around the room. They are not fighting to win the war. Confused murmurs spread through the chamber. What does that mean? The advisor opened the report. His voice barely rose above a whisper. It means they already know they've won. Far beyond Dominion space, humanity's largest fleet in history assembled in the darkness. 10,000 warships. Millions of personnel. Enough power to end an empire. At the center stood the flagship Never Again. Its destination was not a military base. Not a border world. Not a strategic objective. Its destination was the Zoreth capital itself. And when the fleet arrived, the galaxy would witness the final consequence of the massacre. The consequence of teaching peaceful people that mercy had limits. The consequence of making humanity remember exactly what it used to be. The judgment of Earth. The news spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. Humanity's grand fleet was moving. Not toward a border. Not toward a military outpost. Not toward a disputed system. It was heading directly for the Zoreth capital world. Every major government began monitoring the situation. Every intelligence agency focused its sensors on a single point in space. The entire galaxy held its breath. Because everyone understood what this meant. Wars normally ended through negotiation. Through exhaustion. Through compromise. But this war felt different. It felt personal. And that frightened people. For the first time since the conflict began, the Zorath leadership truly panicked. Emergency broadcasts flooded military channels. Reserve fleets were activated. Planetary defenses powered up. Every available warship was recalled to protect the capital. The Dominion gathered everything it had left. Thousands of ships. Millions of soldiers. Enough firepower to devastate entire star systems. Yet despite all their preparations, fear lingered. Because every previous prediction about humanity had been wrong. Every assumption had failed. Every expectation had collapsed. Now nobody knew what the humans would do next. 3 days later, the answer arrived. Human sensors detected the capital system. And then, from the darkness of deep space, the Grand Fleet appeared. Thousands upon thousands of warships emerged from hyperspace. The sight was overwhelming. Even experienced military officers stared in disbelief. The fleet stretched across space like an ocean of steel. Massive carriers. Battle cruisers. Destroyers. Support vessels. Drone swarms. Supply ships. Everything moving with perfect discipline. Perfect coordination. Perfect purpose. At the center stood the flagship Never Again. Its enormous hull reflected the light of distant stars. For a moment, both sides simply stared at one another. Then the Zorath opened fire. The battle began instantly. Planetary defense cannons unleashed beams powerful enough to split moons. Missiles filled space. Fighter squadrons surged forward. The defenders fought with desperation. Because they knew there would be no second chance. Human ships answered immediately. Railguns thundered. Electronic warfare systems shattered targeting networks. Drone swarms overwhelmed defensive positions. Entire formations vanished beneath coordinated attacks. The battle was unlike anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. For 10 continuous hours, space itself seemed to burn. Millions watched live broadcasts. Governments interrupted normal programming. Schools paused lessons. Factories stopped production. Everyone wanted to know how this would end. Then something unexpected happened. Human forces broke through the final defensive line. The path to the capital planet stood open. Nothing remained to stop them. Nothing. Panic erupted among the Zorath population. Citizens rushed toward shelters. Government officials prepared evacuation plans. Military commanders expected orbital bombardment. Many feared the humans would do exactly what the Dominion had done to Massive Fleet 7. Massacre civilians. Destroy cities. Take revenge. After everything that had happened, nobody would have been surprised. But humanity had one final lesson to teach. As human warships entered orbit, every screen on the planet activated simultaneously. Homes. Offices. Factories. Military headquarters. Public terminals. Every display showed the same image. Supreme Commander Elena Torres. Her face appeared calm. Serious. Controlled. Behind her stood the flags of Earth and its colonies. She looked directly into the camera. Directly into the eyes of billions. Then she spoke. People of the Zorath Dominion. We did not come for you. Across the planet, a silence fell. Torres continued. You are not responsible for Massive Fleet 7. You did not issue the order. You did not launch the weapons. You did not choose this path. Millions listened carefully. Some cried. Some stared in disbelief. Others simply watched in silence. Then Torres delivered the words that would later be studied throughout galactic history. "We are not here to punish a species. We are here to punish a decision." The statement spread instantly across every network. Across every world. Across every civilization. Human warships remained in orbit. Yet no bombs fell. No cities burned. No civilians died. Instead, special operations teams targeted government compounds, military command centers, high-ranking officials, the people directly responsible for the massacre. One by one, they were captured. Admirals, ministers, fleet commanders, political leaders. Every individual connected to the attack was taken alive. Not executed. Not tortured. Arrested. The galaxy watched in shock. Many had expected annihilation. What they witnessed instead was judgment. A judgment far more powerful than revenge. Within days, the Dominion government collapsed. Its military surrendered. Its remaining fleets laid down their weapons. The war was effectively over. Yet the most important moment was still coming. A special tribunal was established under international oversight. Representatives from dozens of species attended. Evidence was presented. Witnesses testified. Survivors spoke. Families of the victims told their stories. The proceedings lasted for weeks. And when the verdict finally arrived, nobody questioned it. The guilty were convicted. Justice had been served. Not through distraction, but through accountability. For many observers, this was the moment they finally understood humanity. The terrifying fleets. The overwhelming military power. The relentless campaign. None of it had been driven by hatred. It had been driven by responsibility. Humanity had unleashed the monster. But they had never allowed it to take control. And that realization changed everything. Because if humans had chosen revenge instead of justice, the galaxy knew there would have been nothing left to stop them. Yet deep inside the command deck of the Never Again, Elena Torres stared at a final intelligence report. Her expression darkened. Because the report contained a secret. A dangerous one. The massacre of Massive Fleet 7 had not been ordered by the Dominion alone. Someone else had been involved. Someone hidden. Someone powerful. A shadow that had manipulated events from the beginning. The real architect of the tragedy remained free. And as Torres read the final page, she realized something chilling. The war was over. But the hunt was just beginning. After the massacre, that announced, "We are done being civilized." Section 5 is the shadow behind the massacre. The war was over. Across the galaxy, celebrations erupted. Trade routes reopened. Refugees returned home. Destroyed systems began rebuilding. For the first time in months, people believed peace had returned. But aboard the flagship Never Again, nobody was celebrating. Supreme Commander Elena Torres stood alone in the command center, staring at the intelligence report that had arrived hours earlier. The document contained information so disturbing that only a handful of people in the entire human government had been allowed to see it. For weeks, the investigators had examined every detail surrounding the Massive Fleet 7 massacre. Every transmission. Every military order. Every financial transaction. Every intelligence leak. What they discovered changed everything. The attack had never been solely a Zoret decision. Someone had manipulated events from the shadows. Someone powerful. Someone patient. Someone who had wanted war from the very beginning. The evidence pointed toward a secret organization known only by a codename. The Ascendancy. Most intelligence agencies considered it a myth. A conspiracy theory. A ghost story whispered among spies. Officially, it did not exist. Unofficially, its fingerprints appeared everywhere. Political assassinations, economic collapses, regional conflicts, government coups. For centuries, major galactic crises had shared one strange pattern. Whenever chaos created opportunities, someone always benefited. And now humanity knew who. The Ascendancy believed peace made civilizations weak. They believed fear and conflict accelerated progress. According to recovered documents, they had secretly influenced dozens of governments across the galaxy. The Zorath Dominion had merely been another tool. A weapon. A disposable piece on a much larger board. Torres looked around the command chamber. Her senior officers waited silently. What happens if this information becomes public? One officer asked. Nobody answered immediately. Finally, Torres spoke. The galaxy will panic. Because the implications were terrifying. If the Ascendancy truly existed, then countless wars might have been engineered. Billions of deaths. Entire civilizations shattered. All for someone's agenda. Humanity had defeated the visible enemy. Now they faced the invisible one. The following week, a secure summit was held on Earth. Leaders from every major species attended. Former enemies sat beside former allies. The scars of war remained fresh. Yet something remarkable happened. Nobody argued. Nobody threatened. Nobody demanded concessions. Because everyone understood the danger. The Ascendancy threatened all of them. During the summit, evidence was presented. Secret communications. Financial records. Captured testimonies. By the end of the session, disbelief had vanished. The threat was real. The room fell silent. Then an elderly Velkari diplomat slowly stood. Months earlier, his government had distrusted humanity. Now his voice carried deep respect. What happens next? He asked. Every eye turned toward Elena Torres. She paused for a moment. Then she answered. The same thing humanity has always done. The delegates waited. We protect the future. The statement spread throughout the galaxy. And for the first time since the massacre, hope began replacing fear. A multinational task force was formed. Human investigators worked alongside alien intelligence agencies. Military resources were shared. Information barriers disappeared. Old rivals became partners. The hunt began. It lasted nearly 2 years. The Ascendancy fought back relentlessly. Agents disappeared. Witnesses were targeted. Evidence was destroyed. Entire operations failed. But unlike before, the galaxy was united. And unity proved stronger than manipulation. One by one, the hidden networks were exposed. Secret bases were discovered. Financial systems were dismantled. Political assets were arrested. The shadows grew smaller. Eventually, investigators located the organization's central command facility. It existed inside a hidden station drifting between unexplored star systems. The leaders of the Ascendancy had believed themselves untouchable. They were wrong. A combined fleet representing dozens of civilizations surrounded the station. This time, humanity did not stand alone. The galaxy stood together. Faced with overwhelming evidence and impossible odds, the architects of countless tragedies surrendered. Their reign ended without a single shot being fired. And in that moment, history changed. Years later, students across hundreds of worlds would study the events surrounding Massif Fleet 7. Many expected those lessons to focus on warfare, military strategy, fleet tactics, weapons technology. But that was not what historians remembered most. Instead, they remembered a choice. After the massacre, humanity possessed the power to burn entire worlds, to destroy civilizations, to answer horror with greater horror. Nobody could have stopped them. Yet they chose something harder. Justice. Responsibility. Restraint. The lesson became famous throughout the stars. Power was not measured by how much destruction a civilization could cause. Power was measured by how much destruction it refused to cause. On the 20th anniversary of the massacre, the memorial was built in the Helios corridor. The site overlooked the place where Massive Fleet 7 had been destroyed. Visitors traveled from every corner of the galaxy. Humans. Velkari. Former Zorath citizens. Countless others. At the center stood 30,000 lights. One for every life lost. Beneath them, a simple inscription had been engraved. Visitors often stopped to read it. Many stood there for hours. The message said, "Civilization is not weakness. Mercy is not surrender. Peace is not fear. But if peace is attacked, humanity remembers." And that was the truth the galaxy would never forget. The massacre had awakened the monster humanity kept buried. The stars had watched it rise. They had witnessed its power. But they had also witnessed something even greater. The hand that held the leash. The war ended. The guilty faced justice. The innocent survived. And Earth returned to being civilized once more. Not because it was weak. Not because it was afraid. But because, after remembering everything it was capable of becoming, humanity chose civilization anyway. The